Okay, so I'm re-recording this because I want to address some problems I've seen in the beginning of the grading of this paper. So first of all, I'm going to start with some workflow advice that may prevent some of the issues. So first, what you're supposed to do, what you need is a computer, open to StatCrunch, other tabs will be open as well. And you need either a tab open or preferably instructions on alternate device if you have one. So like a Kindle or an iPad, etc. Okay, don't put it on your phone. In that case, there's no point. Or if you have a printed copy, sometimes that's useful. Okay, so you have then a notepad where you take notes. Okay? Well, what you're supposed to do is as you work through the various activities, you take notes on what you're doing. So you jot down, like what's the maximum temperature, or what are my feelings about this, or what does it mean to be smooth? And you jot down your feelings and your responses to certain ideas. And I want you to think of this as collect ideas. And don't put them down point by point. Don't say, number 4, I did this. Number 5, I did this. Do not number. The reason I'm saying do not number is because some people are abusing the numbers. I have told you repeatedly and people still ignore me, but I do not want numbers in your write-up. I don't want you to think of it in terms of numbers. I do not want you to write numbers. I want you to go through these bullet points as the workflow in which you do the activity. I want to have numbers in my document so that you make sure you hit all the points. And in the end, you're going to have a collection of ideas. I want you to have a big mass of ideas, and I want you to figure out how to organize it. Okay, so the point of the bullet points is so that you get all these ideas covered. But once you have them all sitting in front of you, in your mind, in your mind's eye, have them on paper, have everything there, and you've collected your ideas. Now you organize a document. You don't just cut and paste from my document. You don't necessarily follow the same flow, although some people may choose to. Some people may start with their own personal history of the place and say, this is where I live, or this is where I went on vacation, or this is where my grandparents live. You should probably start with a personal catch because you need to put an introduction and a conclusion in your paper. Your paper is your document, and it should have some context. So you have to supply the context. You supply the context, intro, closing. Make sure you have a heading on your paper, and all your graphics and all your responses will be embedded in your massive write-up, which is probably at least 3 or 4 pages for the better write-ups. Because what happens is you have these ideas, you have these graphics, and you put them together in a way that makes sense, okay? So it's a writing exercise primarily. It is also math, but it is a writing exercise. You're expressing yourself. The mathematics in this assignment should not be too complicated for people, and so it should mostly be an expression of your findings. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Oh, also do not screen capture your entire screen. Make sure you grab only graphics, not entire screen. Okay, so those are the big points, and now I'm going to go through the walkthrough. Okay, I'm also bringing up a copy of the written assignment on my computer, even though I have a copy on my iPad. But if you don't have an alternate device, then it's okay to use your computer, use a separate tab in your computer, but I'm just doing this so that you can see it. Okay, so if you're lucky, you'll be able to actually just click like that, and your computer will take you to the appropriate location. All right, Now you need to go to a location other than Washington, D.C. You are not allowed to use Washington, D.C. or nearby surrounding areas because they all use the same data set that I am going to be using in this demo. You are not allowed to use Washington, D.C., but you can use any other place you want in the entire country, okay? So when you go, let's say, somewhere in the middle of wherever, notice it's DMX. Okay, whatever it is, that's your 3-digit code, or whatever your 3-digit code happens to be. You click and you find your 3-digit code, REV for Reno, Nevada. Okay, but I'm going to zoom in on the DC capital area because that is the place that I'm using for this demo. I didn't get close enough, so I'm going to try zooming in a little bit. LWX, that's what I wanted to show you. LWX is my region, I'm using that data. But there's other data sets within that data, but basically if you stay away from LWX, you're good. What I've specifically said is stay away from Washington, D.C. or any counties surrounding it. So in other words, don't do Prince George, Montgomery County, or these counties in Virginia which border D.C. You stay away from this area. So like if you go all the way out to Harrisonburg, that's far enough away. You should have different weather in Harrisonburg. Okay? All right. What is the next thing you do? Okay, in the document I gave you, in your instructions, I send you to this web page. Now, if you were somewhere else, like I think REV was one of the codes for Reno, Nevada, you would go like that. Well, I spelled it wrong. Okay, then you would end up here. But since my demo is going to be LWX, I'm going to leave it at LWX. Okay, so you change that 3-digit code to match the place you have chosen. Now you click on Now Data and you pick where you want to go. So for example, Washington area is right here. Now select temperature graphs, this one right here. The year should not be 2020. It should be 2019. If you pick 2020, you will get an incomplete temperature graph. It will be cut off partway through. Okay, so I want you to see entire data set for a year. Now, then you want to click Go. This should give you a full temperature graph. Please double check that all these squiggly lines go up to the end of the year, because if they stop partway through, then you've accidentally forgotten to change the year. All right? Okay, now click on the hamburger and say download either PNG or a JPEG so that it can be inserted into your document correctly. Okay? At this point, there's some questions I want you to consider. I want you to look at this and see what it means. I want you to understand why 2 of the graphs are smoother than the 3. So notice these brown curves. These are actually brown curves here. What does that mean? Why are they smoother than these other 3 curves? Now they've been colored. Everything's been colored, so don't let the coloring distract you. There are 5 graphs and they're all labeled appropriately. Okay? So again, there are 3 colored regions, but they're only between bounded graphic regions. So there's a total of 5 sets of data represented in this graph. Okay. Now, I want you to go to StatCrunch American EDU and log in. If you have any trouble with this step, please let me know. I've helped several students get into StatCrunch, and the one student so far I haven't been able to help, I sent to the help desk and they were able to help her get in. So there should be no issue with you, and at this step, hopefully we'll get everybody through this step. Okay, and if not, again, there's all sorts of different hacks. I will help you. Okay, now we're going to keep this open, and we're going to open another tab to wonderground.com. So we're leaving StatCrunch open because it's ready to receive some data. And you're going to look for your location. I'm going to use Washington, D.C. And first it's just going to tell you today's temperature in that location. and wait for it to load. It's got all these ads and stuff like that. How annoying, whatever. Okay, it is what it is. Now, you want to go to the monthly button, history and monthly. Sorry, history then monthly. So click monthly. Select a month in the past. So you see our data is only partly recorded because we're in the current month. So you can either just go back 1 month, you can go back to August if you like, or if you want to look at September, you can just roll back 1 year. So either roll back the year or the month, go back to a month that's already been completed and click the view button. Now, this first graph you see right at the top here is a graph that we're going to recreate right now using StatCrunch. So I just want you to get a good look at it. These 3 red curves, those 3 sets of data are going to be yours, and you're going to recreate this. So you're going to have to scroll down to where it says daily observations. Now, carefully follow these instructions. We're going to copy the temperature for July or whatever date you want, whatever month you're dealing with. You have to make note of that. Copy it. So if you're in a Windows machine, it's usually like Control C. An Apple is usually Command C. Sometimes you can grab it with your mouse. Okay, so do what you need to do to grab that data. Then you go back to StatCrunch. Now, in StatCrunch, you go into this box that says var1. Don't do anything. Just hit Control V or Command V, and all that data should dump right in. Okay? Now, we are going to create a time series plot as follows. We're going to do graph index time plot, and we're going to do all these guys. And we've just now created the plot that we just saw online, but we forgot to put a title. So we have to scroll down and put a title. And what is it? We have to remember what date it was. And so that's really important. And we just said we're doing July of 2020. And so at the very least, you say July, or whatever it is, July 2020, and the place, weather, or whatever you want to call it. At least put, I know what your plot is, so at least put the date and the location so I know what you're talking about. And then you're going to capture, use some kind of screen capture program, select area to grab. Do not give me your entire screen. You only give me the graphic itself. If you grab the entire screen, I will not be happy about that. Okay, so please do not grab your whole screen, only grab the graphic. Okay, next. Next we're going to do side-by-side box plots. Graph, box plot of the same items. And again, you need a title. Whoops, we forgot the title. Go down, put a title. July 2020, Washington, D.C. Okay. Now you look at these plots and you tell me what you think it tells you about how things are changing. How does it tell you about how the temperature was changing over the course of that time period in that location? And tell me, for your data, this will be different for different people, which of these has the greatest amount of change in it. For my data sitting here, the min has the least amount of change and the max has the most amount of change. The average looks like it's kind of in the middle, which makes sense. But your data may be different, so you have to look at your plot and make sure your answers match what you're doing. Okay? Now, we're going to, hopefully you haven't done anything really intense with your mouse recently. You've got the same data just sitting here. Hit Control V again, but notice I want you to be actually just under the var4 cell and hit Control V. Now, what this means is we have now pasted the dates. The dates are offset by 1, and I want you to double check that you have an 86 here and you have an 86 here. okay? But this, where we're currently in row 2, is going to become day 1. So I want you to watch what happens. I'm going to delete this row. So we're going to delete that. Now where it says var 1, var 5, var 6, that is your data set. That is your whole data set. Your entire data set is there. And the data set that's off to the left is diminished by 1 row, you see. Okay, it's offset by 1. And so this data set on the left is diminished by 1 day, but the data set on the right is the full data set. We're going to be looking at the differences. So if we do the following subtraction, data compute expression, I'm going to do max minus var 4, and I'm going to call this max delta. And I'm going to hit, rather than, I can say data compute expression again, but I can just pull that box up again. Av minus var 5 is av delta, and min minus var 6 is min delta. Okay, so let's double check and understand what this is saying. If I'm on row 3, the complete data set is under var 4, var 5, var 6, and the 3 columns to the left are talking about what happens the subsequent day. So if I'm in this row, row 6, I'm talking about whatever month I'm in. The 6th of the month is the data here, and the 7th of the month is the data off to the left. Remember, because we deleted that row, so everything shifted up. So the data on the left is for the next day, and the data in the middle is the same date as the row index, okay? So if I find something happening in this row, if I look at the delta here, this delta is the delta that is we're talking about, that the 6th and the 7th of the month has a delta here, because this is the 6th of the month and this is the 7th of the month. And if you notice, the temperature went down by 5 degrees, and so the minus in this case is indicating that the temperature went down between those 2 consecutive days. Okay? For these 3 new columns, we're going to create another index time plot. And that's going to be the deltas. And I'm going to put a title, DC July 2020. Was that, double check that that was the right, yep, it was July 2020. And deltas. I'm just going to call it deltas, but that way I'm distinguishing it from my other plot. I can tell that this is my deltas plot, okay? And I'm looking at this, and one thing I can say is, like, where are the maximum temperature changes happening? And if I take my mouse and I highlight the top here, it will highlight the max increase, but what's the max decrease? Well, it looks like it happened down here. All right, so if you don't want to just eyeball it, another thing you can do is you can say, wait, was that right? Was that the max change? And what you're going to do is stat, summary stats, columns, and I believe I even asked you to do this explicitly. You want to do all these guys, and you want to be absolutely sure you can get other stuff in there, it doesn't matter, but you absolutely need the max and the min for sure. And then that's going to tell you what the correct answer should be. Forget the average, I only cared about the max delta and the min delta, but for the max delta I should have found my negative 13 and my 9. So I go back here and see, did I actually find my negative 13 and my 9? Yes, I did. I found it by looking at the plot. Now, my temperature, my maximum, like I went, what this is saying is on the 24th of the month, it was 84 degrees. And on the 25th of the month, it was 93 degrees. Okay, that's what it's saying. Now, it's saying here that on the 30th of the month, it was 93 degrees, and it dropped down to 80 degrees on the last day of the month. That's what it's saying, okay? So make sure you get the indexing right. I know it can be confusing, but think it through and it should make some sense. While I'm here, I'm looking for the min deltas. I don't know if I can, I don't think I can highlight it that way, but I could find the -4 and the 5. So let me clear this and let me go to the graphic that I just hid. Those are my deltas, and I'm looking for the green curve. Where does the green curve go the highest? I think it's here. And where does the green curve go the lowest? Like, maybe it's here. Maybe it's not. I'm going to try that and see if I got it right. If not, I'll have to keep looking. Okay? So my min delta, I should have gotten a -4. Yep, I found it. And that happened between the 28th and the 29th of the month. So let's look at my minimum temperature here, which is this third column. I went from 79 to 75 as a min temperature. And there should be another 5-degree one that's highlighted. Aha, I got it. So my 5-degree difference, I went from, so min is var 6, I went from 71 to 76. My min temperature went up by 5 degrees between the 7th and the 8th of the month. For some students, you will have ties. It's okay, but you should tell me that there's a tie. You should say it happened twice or whatever. So that happens in some data sets, so just be aware of that. Okay, now you also want to create a box plot for these guys. If you were having trouble finding your max delta and min delta before, you should be able to just click them here and here, for example, or if you want the min delta, just click here and here, and it should turn pink. Don't worry about these other pinks. What these other pinks are saying is those data points still exist in the other graphics too. So you just see where that happened, and don't worry about that. You'll get a whole bunch of extra dots you weren't looking for. But it will help you locate those specific max and min points that you're trying to find. And again, you need a title on everything. Titles, titles, titles. Okay, now you want to save your CSV file. It's probably listed as untitled. I'm going to say July 2020 DC, so I know what it is, and it's going to give me an error, and I say that's okay, shut up, I don't care what you're saying, just a stupid computer. Now, I want to go ahead and say data export, all that stuff. Now, the reason it was yelling at you is because it wants you to be logged into Pearson, but you don't have a Pearson account. So it's going to try to save the data inside your Pearson account, but we don't care. We're not trying to. Okay. Now you have all your data, you have all your graphics. If you have personal experience in your location of choice, you can talk about it from personal experience. If you have never been to your location, you should look up on Wikipedia or anywhere else to learn about your location. Normally, Wikipedia is not a good resource for research, but it's okay in this instance because I am giving you permission. Never assume that you can use Wikipedia as a resource unless your instructor tells you it's okay. Most instructors don't permit it. Okay, now all these bits of advice, make sure you put a header, make sure you only use docx, or PDF as your format for your write-up, otherwise I won't be able to see it and you will get a 0. You will get a chance to redo it, but it will be a pain because you'll have to resubmit it. Make sure your CSV file is a CSV file. Don't give me like a PDF and tell me it's your data. Okay, make sure it's a data file. And that's it. Just make sure you, after you're done with the write-up, go through and read the instructions a second time just to make sure you followed all the directions properly. So that's it. Hopefully this is a cleaner video with better instructions for you. Hopefully this will help you have better success on your project. Okay? See you in class.